All right. Well, it is just shortly after 7:30 in the morning, my time. Welcome to Inspire, a virtual skydiving conference presented by the Canadian Sport Parachuting Association Women's Initiative Committee. My name is Allison Cooney, and I am the chair of the Women's Initiative Committee.
Bienvenue à Inspirer, une conférence virtuelle sur le parachutisme présentée par le Comité des initiatives des femmes de l'Association canadienne de parachutisme sportif. Je m'appelle Michelle et je suis la directrice exécutive de l'ACPS, mais je suis également l'ancienne présidente et une membre actuelle du comité.
Today's presentations will be done in the language of the presenter's choice, so English or French. To facilitate this for listeners, we have partnered with Interprify to offer translation assistance throughout the conference. If you are not bilingual in English and French, we encourage you now to take a moment and follow the steps to enable translation captions in your preferred language. It is important to use the appropriate downlink depending on the type of device you're going to use, be it computer or mobile. The Interprify links are found in the chat. If during the conference you have any technical issues with the translation captions, please send a message through the chat.
Les présentations aujourd'hui feront dans la langue des choix des présentateurs anglais ou français. Pour faciliter cela pour les auditeurs, nous nous sommes associés à Interprify pour offrir une assistance à la traduction tout au long de la conférence. Si vous n'êtes pas bilingue en anglais et en français, nous vous encourageons maintenant à prendre un moment à suivre les étapes pour activer les sous-titres de traduction dans votre langue préférée. Il est important d'utiliser le lien de téléchargement approprié selon le type d'appareil que vous utilisez, ordinateur ou téléphone portable. Les liens de Interprify se trouvent dans le chat. Si pendant la conférence vous rencontrez des problèmes techniques avec les sous-titres de traduction, veuillez envoyer un message via le chat.
Just over 1 year ago, the committee had a vision to empower our community of skydivers and stakeholders in our sport. As technology provided more ways to connect, the concept of a virtual skydiving conference began to take shape. As we brainstormed ideas, it was evident that there were amazingly talented, dedicated, and admired women throughout skydiving in Canada and on an international platform. Having these selected women share their experiences, their passion, and their dedication to mentoring others became the core mission of our conference. If you have not already done so, all the conference materials are available to download off the event website, which are located as well in the chat.
Il y a un peu plus d'un année, le comité avait pour une vision de responsabiliser notre communauté de parachutisme et les parties prenantes dans le sport. Alors que la technologie offrait de plus en plus de moyens de se connecter, le concept d'une conférence virtuelle sur le parachutisme a commencé à prendre forme. Alors que nous réfléchissions à les aider, il était évident qu'il y avait des femmes incroyables, talentueuses, dévouées et amirées dans le parachutisme au Canada et sur une plateforme internationale. Le fait que ces femmes sélectionnées partagent leurs expériences, leurs passions et leur dévouement à apprendre alors les autres est devenu la mission principale de notre conférence. Si vous ne l'avez pas déjà fait, tous les documents de la conférence peuvent être téléchargés sur le site web de l'événement qui se trouve dans le chat.
We look forward to being inspired by the presenters and panelists we have planned for today. During every discussion, we will open the floor for question and answer opportunities. If you have a question, please send it to the chat and we will try to get through as many as we can in the given agenda time. During the conference, the open chat functions of Zoom will be closed. Instead, all messages sent will go directly to the hosts and will be redirected accordingly.
Nous avons hâte d'être inspirés par les présentateurs et les panélistes qui nous ont planifiés pour aujourd'hui. Lors de chaque discussion, nous ouvrirons la parole pour les opportunités de questions et réponses. Si vous avez une question, veuillez l'envoyer dans le chat et nous essaierons de répondre à autant de questions que possible dans le temps imparti. Pendant la conférence, les fonctions de chat ouvertes de Zoom seront fermées. Au lieu de cela, tous les messages envoyés iront directement aux autres et seront rédigés par conséquence.
After each presentation and discussion, We have allocated short breaks to allow you an opportunity to provide feedback. Simply scan the QR code you will see on your screen or copy the link that will be posted in the chat following each presentation. Your input is important to us, and it will help shape and strengthen conferences in the future.
Après chaque présentation et discussion, nous avons prévu des courtes pauses pour vous permettre de donner vos avis. Scannez simplement le code QR que vous verrez sur votre écran ou copiez le lien qui sera posté dans le chat suite à la présentation. Votre contribution est importante pour notre équipe afin de renforcer les conférences à l'avenir. I want to thank you all again for attending. Now, without delay, let's get inspired. Maintenant, sans tarder, nous inspirons-nous.
Hello, bonjour, Tansi. On behalf of CSPA, I would like to formally welcome you to the first ever Inspire conference brought to you by the Women's Initiative Committee. For those that don't know me, I'm Kenita Vanstone and I'm CSPA's president. Au nom de l'ACPS, je voudrais vous souhaiter officiellement la bienvenue à la toute première conférence Inspire organisée par le Comité des initiatives de femmes. Pour ceux qui ne me connaissent pas, je m'appelle Kenita Vanstone et je suis la présidente de l'ACPS. This conference is an opportunity for us to experience several common facets of our sport by a host of rockstar souls who represent only 14% of the Canadian skydiving population, also the North American population. It has been an absolute pleasure and privilege to experience the passion that went into putting this event together, and an honor to be included in the details. I genuinely hope you feel inspired by this event. Before we officially begin, I would like to cite a land acknowledgement. I would like to first recognize we're all located in various treaties and territories within Canada, and then some of you who are joining from other countries. CSPA honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and their valuable past and present contributions to our lands. Further, CSPA respects and affirms the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across these lands. I myself reside on Treaty 1 territory in southern Manitoba, which is on traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, while my band, Tatasqueyak First Nation, is located on Treaty 5 territory in northern Manitoba. If you're unsure of the treaty territory you reside on, I encourage you to be curious and seek this information out. My fellow Canadians, you may refer to the treaty territory information located within our federal website. Women's Initiative Committee, thank you for this wonderful gift. Panelists, thank you so much for contributing your time and sharing yourselves today. Attendees, thank you so much for joining us. Now on to our presentations. Allison, please take it away.
Thank you, Kenina. It is now my pleasure to introduce a woman who truly knows how to create the hype in any room. Melanie Curtis is a leader and known voice in skydiving and personal and professional development. She is an author, podcast host, and pro skydiver. She has been tapped as an expert in Forbes, Fast Company, Thrive Global, on CBS Evening News, CBS Sunday Morning, NBC Know Your Value, Master of Scale, and more. Melanie is a sought-after speaker and coach, teaching skills of peak performance, deep healing, and being brave as our access to being free. Melanie co-founded Highlight, an all-female professional demonstration jump team, whose mission is to inspire women and girls to live bold, brave lives of their own design, elevate gender equality, and motivate social impact. She is also the executive director of Women's Skydiving Network Foundation, who funds this effort, as well as providing support, resources, and community to women in skydiving and women looking to get into skydiving. Melanie, thank you for joining us, and I pass the floor over to you.
Oh my goodness. Good morning, everyone. That's quite an intro. It's always quite humbling to be introduced. Thank you all for taking your time and spending your valuable time and energy on this type of conference, on learning. Today, I'm going to share my screen because I'm giving the same presentation that I just delivered at the Parachute Industry Association Symposium, and that's where Allison and I connected. So I'm going to share my screen and go through that deck as we move through today's talk. So share sound, optimize for video. Boom. I am not a tech genius, but I like to play one on TV. But anyway, for real, thank you guys so much for being here, because it matters to show up and care to learn about what you're going to learn about in today's session. But in specifically my session, thanks for caring to learn about impact and influence and how we can wield the power of those things for good in our sport and beyond. So before we start in any storytelling or anything, I want to talk about the definitions of these two words. So impact reads as, quote, having a strong effect on someone or something. Cool. Influence, the definition reads, quote, the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone or something. Cool. Now, when I read these definitions, to me, it reads that this effect, this strong effect, is in line with us, right? Is in line with our core values and our unique leadership. And so that's basically what we're going to do today. There's a million things I could talk about relative to impact and influence. So what we're going to do is look at these concepts through the lens of professional skydiving and the three pillars that I've seen in my unique experience. So let's dive right into it. The first one is big goals and peak performance. So before we start to dive into the depths of this one, let me first play a video for you guys, which will help illuminate this particular pillar of the Venn diagram. Let's see. I can finally feel the sun kissing my skin. I just want to take it in. Yeah, I just want to take it in. This is what it's all about. These are the moments we live for. Once in a lifetime, everything we want and more. This is the start of a new day, the good life. Ooh. These are the moments we live for.
can find.
So, as Allison pointed to, that is a demonstration jump that we did with Highlight earlier in 2022. And Highlight, just to reiterate, our core mission with Highlight is to inspire women and girls to live bold, brave lives of their own design. So that whole of their own design is meant to be like, yeah, we would love to inspire more women to join us in skydiving, speaking to the underrepresentation of women in our sport. But we also care more broadly to inspire women and girls and everyone to live more up into their potential. And this video showcases a lot of things relative to impact and influence, and specifically that pillar of doing big things and accessing peak performance. It showcases embodying possibilities, right? So most people see skydiving, period, and they think there's no way I could do that, right? There's no way I could jump out of a perfectly good airplane. We hear that all the time. So skydiving at all is showcasing that possibility. So this particular video showcases not only doing it, but it also shows doing it at the highest levels. So we're landing in an overhung stadium that's sunk in. We're doing it in front of 20,000 people. We have to land on our feet. We have to then take the microphone and speak in front of those 20,000 people. It is a no joke situation. Like even the most seasoned among us in our skydiving community will recognize the intensity and the respect required to enter into this type of space. And so theoretically, seeing this calls us all up into, whoa, if they can do it, maybe I can do it, that type of idea. We also see the radiant energy that we bring when we're connecting with people after we've landed. We see that those people watching us land, we want to share that humanity. We see this is just another group picture from a different demo that we did, but again, connecting. We see the amplification on different platforms. So we see the large media that we try to get with these demonstration jumps. Again, we're using
Hey, Melanie, this is Allison. I just wanted to let you know, I think you have frozen up. We may have just lost her, so we're just going to give her a minute to check back in. We always hope technology runs perfectly, but it's not always the case. So I think she just had some login issues. We're going to get her right back up here shortly and get going again.
While we're waiting on Melanie to come back, can we see some faces? Can you turn on your video? Only if you're feeling comfortable with it. I would love to see faces. Yeah. Svetlana. What else do we have? Rena, Veronica.
Hello,
Veronique.
Karina.
Pardon me.
Hello.
Carmen. Oh, look at these beautiful faces. Yes, Ellen. Shannon. Dana, good morning, good morning. Valerie, oh, hi, Denise, hi, welcome, welcome, welcome. Martha, Kate, Justine, I'm reading your names, so if I pronounce it incorrectly, my goodness, I am so sorry.
God love technology, team. Sorry about that. I was like, wow, no one's there anymore.
Welcome back, Melanie.
And I realized it, right? You got to love that, right? When you know that you're like, okay, I think I know where I lost you, but what did you last hear? And I'll totally dive right back into it. I'm so sorry, everyone. Technology, don't know.
It's all good. I believe you were just talking about, you had showed the video or the picture. Yep.
Okay.
Where you were embracing and talking about that power of influence on the bigger stage there.
Okay. So this slide here?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. I'm going to make sure I share the sound and optimize for video. So again, sorry, everyone.
It's all good.
It's the nature of our world. So be it. It may who knows? It may happen again. There's very little we can control. Where are you guys? My participants. Oops. My apologies, everyone. Can you hear me? Allison, can you confirm? I can't actually see anyone anymore.
Yeah, we hear you and see you perfectly fine.
Okay, good. All right. So, well, to continue, again, we're talking about this first pillar of big goals and peak performance. And I mentioned about getting bigger media and how that getting on those bigger stages and seeing those opportunities, those are ways that we impact the messages that we're using skydiving to carry, right? So we're talking about elevating women and girls. We're talking about being bold and being brave. Those are the messages that when we get a bigger media spot, or when we get Jennifer Garner to share it on her platform with her millions of followers, that's a real obvious amplification of the impact and the influence that we're looking to have. And one of the things that I think is really important to talk about and note is that being willing to be on a big stage at all is brave, right? So it's scary to go, oh, I got to land on my feet in front of 20,000 people, or I have to take a microphone and talk to the CBS Evening News or whatever, but we're doing it from this perspective of, we know that this is in service to the bigger purpose that we care about. And so that is where we source our inspiration and our motivation, but that's also access to impact and influence, right? We know that every time we jump out into a stadium, we know we could screw it up, right? We know, I know that I could stumble over my words every time I show up in it. My internet could go out or whatever, and I could trip over my words on a big news interview. And that is, I think, a bigger part of this particular piece is that the willingness to be out in the world, the willingness to fail in our efforts, that the outcome is so much less important than that willingness to try, that willingness to be brave enough to be seen. And I bring us to the next photo here, which is the most recent women's vertical world record, Project 19. It was in a little bit of it was in your opening video, which was so inspiring. But everyone on this record is taking that same chance. You know, we're all in service to this bigger mission, to this bigger team, knowing that we're also putting our individual selves on the line each time, both physically and literally, but also emotionally and socially. And there's a lot to be said about what it took for every person on this record to do that. And again, it's so much less about the actual achievement. We wanted to get 100 way. We got an 80 way, but is it any less inspiring? I contest no chance, you know? So there's so much there in that willingness. So I normally invite people to type into the chat, and I would invite you to type into the chat to one of the hosts, and they can share any useful or any cool insights that people have to share. But what comes up for you when you're thinking about leaning into big goals and leaning into peak performance? So I'm going to stop my share just for a second because I want to make sure that I can see everyone, make sure I'm still connected. That's what we do. Cool. Yeah. And so Allison or any of the hosts, if something interesting is coming through, I would welcome you to share it, because it does tend to make things better when we hear from each other, when we're in a discussion around these things versus just listening and learning, it's great to get involved directly as well. So if you have anything cool, if not, no worries. We can continue into the next section.
Melanie, can you just repeat what you're wanting feedback on again?
Yeah, we're talking about these pillars, right? And so I just shared about how big goals and peak performance help us access impact and influence, help us amplify those powers. And I'm just curious if what stands out to people, what maybe comes up for them. You don't have to type into the chat. It's more just if people have some insights or something that resonates for them, we'd love to hear it, because that tends to speak to the group as well. But no worries, go ahead and share. Okay, I got some people sharing in the chat, and they're saying, okay, fear of the unknown. Yep. Not thinking I'm good enough. Totally. Absolutely. And so that's the thing, like when we're talking about the world record, for example, you think my brain didn't go nonstop being like, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this. I could just not do this. Like I'm scared, like all of the things. So that's very normal. Those are totally normal responses when we're leaning into this particular part of the Venn diagram, this specifically going after big things and trying to perform at a higher and higher level in our zones of choice. Cool. All right. So let's keep rolling. All right. Let me share again. All right. Cool. All right. So we've got this Venn diagram. We've got big goals and peak performance. We just talked about that. The next thing that I would invite us to consider is connection and relationships. So big goals and peak performance, doing all the cool things, only go so far if we don't connect with people, if we don't connect on a human to human level. It's those big things, the inspiration of doing a large scale demonstration jump or doing a world record, that inspiration is only accessible if people can see themselves in the people doing it. So that's why it's so critical to connect in our shared humanity, to tell our real stories of the real people that we are, right? The building trust through actual relationship is key to accessing the more full power of impact and influence. Does that make sense? I know I'm asking questions. I'm typically in a space where people can respond. Okay, cool. I get a thumbs up. Thank you, guys. I love that. But really, you have to really think about that and go, how can I make myself accessible? This is a moment from a demo jump that we did in North Carolina, where we just sort of luckily, it sounds weird, but we did the demo and then immediately a giant thunderstorm rolled in and it forced the entire stadium to be evacuated out because of potential lightning strikes and stuff like that. What it did, it opened up this beautiful hour of time where we got to really connect with the people that were there. And it's like, we have to make the time and make the effort to really do this. So that's one thing I want you to think about relative to connection and relationship, and specifically when we're thinking about how we want to impact and influence other people and their actions and their character and how do we inspire. The other thing is we want to think about is long-term. We want to think about building relationships, bigger picture. We want to think about building a network of these human-to-human connections, right? We want to do that over time through kindness, through inclusion, through shared experiences. I've been doing this. I say all the time that I love people. Personally, I love people. I joke that even people I don't like, I like, because I really am a huge just believer in and lover of people and the human experience. But the long-term effort that we make to build relationships and share life experiences and be relentless in how we show up in alignment with our values and kindness and all the things that we are talking about today, that effort over the long term unlocks power and impact and influence that we can't actually access any other way. So yeah, okay, someone might be following me on Instagram or something like that, and we're building a relationship theoretically that way because I'm sharing my authentic self. We're in this talk today. You guys are getting to know me a little bit, but that's different than being in actual relationship with a person and making that effort. So it's definitely difficult to scale this, but recognize that sometimes doing those things that don't scale is more important and more powerful than we realize in the short term. So consider that. And why I bring this up and why I speak to it so directly and so passionately is that my hope is that knowing that power in our network and relationships, that gives us hopefully motivation in the present to do that work, to continue to show up. And it'll give us hopefully access to patience and go, oh, okay, I realize that in my career has been 27 years long. And oh, okay, I get it. After 20 years, that's when things started to really go. And I'm not suggesting that to make you feel like you have to wait 20 years, but I'm saying that is what you get when you commit to the longer term road of connection and relationship. Okay, I got a note here in the chat from the audience. When I take a mom for a skydive and her young kids are watching, I always tell the kids that their mom is like a superhero because now she can fly. Trying to highlight doing big things is for everyone. Absolutely. Love that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about relative to connection and relationship are key relationships. This is James LeBerry. Maybe you guys know him, maybe you don't, but he is back in the day when I worked at Skydive Elsinore back in the day, and with our collective there, we created this absolutely incredible culture of inclusion and fun and competition, like coaching teams. It was just this really wonderful era at Skydive Elsinore. And part of that was growing the Chicks Rock Boogie event and really bringing that up into a really just place where so many people wanted to come and be a part of that energy that we were creating. James, he was at the same time doing a similar thing with Skydive Carolina and Carolina Fest, but doing it from the perspective of the drop zone owner and the general manager, in that he wanted everyone who came to Carolina Fest to feel like they were really welcomed there, that he really cared about the organizers, every participant, every vendor, all the staff. And so he was really elevating the standard of boogies at the same time. Anyway, because he saw what I was doing with Chicks Rock and all of that, he invited me to one of the very first Carolina Fests as an organizer. And I mean, I swear, I feel like I look 12 years old in this picture, which I think is kind of amazing. He looks like, I don't know, 18. Suffice it to say, we've come a long way. The lower right picture here is us at the PIA symposium, a handful of years ago, but like we've shared these experiences and we've been able to support each other over time and become very, very good friends and professional colleagues as a result. This is Shannon, another key relationship in my life. This is my very best friend in the world. I love her. We met at Chicks Rock in 2004. We bonded over just a moment. I mean, I don't know if you guys have these experiences, but she was basically wanting to do like just bring her massage table to the boogie. And I was new to organizing boogies. So I'm like, yeah, sure, cool. That'll be great. And we just saw each other across the drop zone and were really connected and we loved each other immediately. And the reason it became something wonderful is that because we showed up in that friendship and honored that initial connection and made it true. So that's something to think about too when you make friends in skydiving. Another person I can't not highlight as a key relationship is Jay Maletsky. What's interesting about Jay and me is that he was, of course, I mean, I don't know if you know Jay, but he's a world champion canopy pilot. He was one of the founding members of the PD Factory team and Flight One. And anyway, we had a lot of experiences where we crossed paths in our early days in skydiving. But interestingly, we were just talking about this the other day. We both realized that back in the day, we both felt insecure to talk to the other person, to actually connect with each other. I was like, oh, he's on the PD Factory team. Like, he's too cool. He won't want to talk to me. And for whatever reason, he was thinking something similar about me. I don't even know, but it blew my mind that he was thinking that. But why I bring that up is that Jay and I didn't connect more deeply for years because of that insecurity, because of that limiting belief that we had about each other, about thinking that we, that the other wouldn't want to talk to us. So watch where you think that relative to people in your sphere, whether it's your local community or professionals that you meet on the road or whatever. The last person I'll share as a key relationship is Jonathan Tagle. I don't know if you guys know Jonathan. He basically is another one of my very, very best friends. And we lived together for 6 years. We just were very, very close. He was a part of the Elsinore amazing energy and vibe that we were creating back in the day. He too was one of the very early members of the PD Factory team. And Jonathan, he was very supportive of me. He was very encouraging of me. He was the person who encouraged me to apply for my very first sponsorship with PD. He said, you should apply. And I'm doing these new things. I'm brand new professional at Skydive Elsinore back in the day. And I was like, what? Like, I would never, ever have done that without his encouragement. And PD is now my longest running sponsor to date. Like, they fully sponsored me from my very first pitch. I'm not saying that is typical and tends to happen all the time. It's a different tone of sponsorship these days. So that's a different conversation. But my point is that I would never have done that without the encouragement from our friendship. So yeah, I mean, Jonathan and I just have so many memories. We were on a team together, take ridiculous photo shoots. We laugh, love each other, just all the things. So again, I welcome in the chat if you have any thoughts around connection and relationship and how you see it as a key piece of impact and influence. So we got those two pieces of the Venn diagram. Because we had a little bit of a break because of the internet fallout, I'm going to keep going, but please do share in the chat. And if we get anything, we can call that out. Skydiving is extending family. Yeah, absolutely. For sure. For sure. It's interesting how we can feel really accepted in our beautiful community. I like to call us the sea of misfit toys. But in that understanding, we connect. And in that understanding, we feel supported to go after the things that we're interested in. So it's a big deal. Okay. All right. And any questions, by the way, please type them into the chat as well, because I know this can be a lot, sort of like a fire hose presentation. So we've got these two, big goals, peak performance, connection, and relationship. So what's the third pillar? I'm not sure how this lands for people. I think it can land different ways for different people. It might sound strange to some, but the third pillar is deep healing. Now, Jonathan died in 2012. And I just will never forget this day. And I'm sure a lot of us have experiences like this. I hope not, but I imagine we do. My friend Taya, she texted me and was like, hey, I just want to check in, make sure you're okay. And I didn't know what she was talking about. I was visiting my family, and I don't know, it was just bad cell service or whatever. And I wrote back, I was like, yeah, I'm fine. What's up? Not knowing what was going on. And she immediately called me, and I didn't answer because I was with my family, but I knew something was wrong. Like, my heart right now, even just thinking back to that moment, my heart gets really tight. And anyway, I took my phone up to the top of the hill, and I listened to her voicemail and she told me that Jonathan had died. And it's just, I think this is so important to talk about, because I feel like we all know those moments where our lives and ourselves and our hearts are sort of irrevocably altered in a moment like that. And it might be in skydiving, it might not. I mean, this happens to be in skydiving for me relative to losing Jonathan, but I want to call us out to this idea that life wounds us sometimes, you know what I mean? And that the pain of it is real and equally worthy of our respect and attention. Because if we're really thinking about how can I show up in the world with my highest radiance, how can I show up in the world and be an honest and true expression of myself? It's not to say that we shouldn't have pain. It's just to say that ignoring pain can really, really have a negative impact on our ability to show up in the world and to feel free. And so it can be a very, very brave thing to start to look at those things that really hurt us. So I know that's kind of heavy for the first part of the day, but it's a really important part of this presentation. This is a picture from Jonathan's ash dive over Dubai. I released his ashes over the Palm. He was living there when he died, and he really loved living there. And so it was this really beautiful thing that we did with the PD Factory team that was there during the World Meet of 2012, the Mondial there. And that's the question that I want to ask you around this particular pillar of deep healing. It's like, okay, life wounds us. So what do we do? What do we do when we're so wounded? What do we do? How do we navigate the pain and struggle of just being a person? You know, like life can be really hard sometimes. It doesn't have to be a death. It could be a divorce. It could be losing a job. It could be having a friendship end. It could be any number of things that sort of really wound us that we maybe don't know how to navigate. And so that's what I would invite us to start thinking about. And so like, how do we do it? Well, you know, this is a good example as we do whatever we can, right? We give ourselves grace. We do everything that we're called toward. So we're obviously honoring Jonathan's life in this ash dive, and this experience is funny. I was borrowing gear because the parachute that I jumped at the time, it was a high performance parachute, but it was not remotely at the wing loading that was sort of reasonable to be flying in a flock with these guys. So I borrowed some gear for the jump, and it was totally safe and totally awesome. But what was funny about it is that the removable slider, I couldn't get it off. Like I didn't jump with a removable slider. So it was just up there flapping the whole time, making me float more. So it was just like making the whole jump that I easily could have been like, oh my God, this is for my best friend. It has to be the most perfect jump because, oh my God, then I'm not honoring him perfectly and whatever. I just let it flap. And you know what? I've got the best canopy pilots in the world with me. They sorted it out. It was beautiful, right? It was fine. And that's this sort of a small example of giving yourself grace in a moment. But we do it together. You know, we share that. We move through the pain together. On a lighter side of how do we navigate being a person and the struggle of it, we get into nature. You know, this is balancing the intensity of these big demonstration jumps that we do by connecting and going for a hike in the beautiful mountains. I'm a writer. I write. And so that's part of how I transmute my pain into service. I speak. That's another way that I transmute that pain into service so that it feels like there's a healing around that. Not everyone needs to do this. This is just one way that I creatively self-express. So it's something to think about. But why I do that also is that I mentioned the big things are only accessible when we can see the humanity in them. And that's part of why deep healing matters, is that if I am a person who can jump into a stadium in front of 20,000 people or do a world record with 100 of my friends, and I'm a person who struggles with grief, and I'm a person who feels afraid about that record, and I'm a person who's like procrastinates on her writing her column, that humanity says, oh, if she's that person, I'm that person too. I procrastinate. Oh, I have grief. Then that helps me go, oh, if she's that, maybe I can be that too. So that's part of how we bridge the gap between doing big things that then feel inaccessible to making them more accessible for the people we're trying to serve. Does that make sense? So just food for thought, everyone. And again, my book, same thing, telling the stories and making sure that people feel less alone in their struggle. So let's see. Okay. So where can the longer term commitment take us? I mentioned this longer term commitment to these relationships, the longer term commitment to all this stuff. Let's see what the chat says. It's okay not to be okay. Absolutely. Yeah. Like we're human, for God's sakes, you know? Say that. One of the things that I noted about the PIA, and I have no clue what time it is because it's, I feel like, 11:17. All right, we're getting there. The last PIA, this PIA, the last PIA, I was awarded the first ever Parachute Industry Association Mentorship Award. And that's because I've cared about this. I've done the work to step into this kind of leadership. I've cared so much about it for so long that the people, and I have an online skydiving coaching group, and those people kind of banded together to get me that acknowledgement, which was a beautiful, wonderful, one of the most the proudest moment in my skydiving career, probably. And I got to present that award to the next recipient this year. It was just so wonderful. And so like, I would never have been able to predict that. I only had to continue to show up in my values, continue to be the person that I authentically am. And that's how it's taken me to these versions of leadership that you see today. But to speak more to this and even beyond my own skydiving leadership, Shannon, I mentioned she's my very best friend. She founded the Great Spirit Farm Healing and Retreat Center. And this is a space and a place where people can access their own spiritual exploration and have deep healing experiences and go there to safely explore the dark corners of ourselves and be healed by sharing and being able to be seen for those things that we think we can't show. That as an avenue of unlocking more of our light, I believe very, very, very deeply in this pillar of deep healing. I'm on the board of her nonprofit because we share this belief and this commitment to healing others and humanity. And I call this out because this collaboration is born from us doing the real work in our friendship over the last 20 years. Right. And the ripple effect, if we talk about impact and influence, the ripple effect of helping other people access healing and freeing other people from pain, that's immeasurable. Right. And so this is sort of mirrored in what I do as a life coach. I've been a life coach for 17 years as well. And that's a similar healing space where we meet in conversation, we explore our fears, we are brave enough to say we want something, and then we figure out how to go there. Like that's a brave move. And there's healing when we're allowed to go after that and be imperfect in the process. The other thing I want to share relative to long-term is Jay. Right. I mentioned Jay and I spent years dancing around each other and insecure and afraid to talk to each other. And one day, what's so cool about Jay and my story is that because I was out in the world so relentlessly embodying my core values, Jay felt that from me. And even though we weren't close, he saw me and could feel that, and similarly me with him. And so one day Jay just basically wrote me a message on like Facebook Messenger and was like, hey, yo, I'm not sure exactly how, but I think we should work together in some way. like, what do you think? It was just like very, very simple, very, very basic message, but it was an intuition that he followed. And it was brave for him to reach out to this person. And for me, it was a very intuitive, immediate yes. Same thing. I didn't know what it was going to be. I had no idea where we were going to go, but it became the Trust the Journey podcast that we do. It's now been over 4 years. We have 125 episodes. Again, it's not even about that outcome. It's about us leaning into those intuitions and then taking something over a longer term period of time and trusting that if it's honest and pure, it's going to go where it is meant to go. And so that's a big thing. And so in this podcast, we model healing conversations, what it's like to look at our shadow and also to share what's worked for us. And so all of those things are really, really, I think just, again, how we're transmuting our life experiences into service, and also hopefully modeling for other people how to do the hard work, like how to do the hard stuff so that we really can unlock all of that light, like I keep mentioning. Because again, I really can't not say this one more time, is like, we cannot be at our full radiance. We cannot be most fulfilled. We cannot be as impactful, as influential if pain is holding us down. We can't be as magnetic as a leader when we are internally battling ourselves. And so like that is a really, really big part of the work of impact and influence that people often miss. So, okay, that's a ton. It's a lot of stuff. We're getting close. Okay. Yep. Good. I have a massive amount of grief that I am learning to work my way through. I hear you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Whoever shared that. Yes, it's true. And you're not alone. And it's very real. Okay. We're getting very close. Thank you for staying with me. Okay. So, and this is just a photo shoot Jay and I did at PIA this year because it's hilarious. Okay. So the next question is what's in the middle? And we're very close to the end, but what's in the middle? And I could talk about a million different things, right? There's a ton of different things I could speak to. And here's a big list of stuff. You're like, this is not exhaustive. This is not even remotely exhaustive. It's not in any particular order, but these are a bunch of things that go into the kind of leadership that I'm talking about. And I was going to share a video, but I think we're running out of time. So I don't know if I want to, but let me just share the first few seconds of it. Let's watch this. It's from Project 19, from the world record. Because these videos are really cool. Get a little bit of life from this beautiful skydiving experience that a lot of us just had. Yeah, Allison, can you tell me how many minutes I have left? Okay, we're all good for time. Okay, great. Perfect. Yeah, so this is one of the record attempts. This is my favorite skydive of the entire record, even though it wasn't the actual record. It's just like so incredible what everybody did to make this possible. It really, really inspires me. And I have said it many times, I will never not talk about this. So even though I was so afraid and my mind tried to get in my way so many times, I am so glad I checked in with my intuition every time. And I trusted that this was going to be worth it for me. And it has proven so. Absolutely. Other people made it. I got to celebrate at the end, of course. Other people made a different choice for the record, right? Where their intuition was calling them to step down. And that's equally as brave. It's equally as brave to say, I'm not going to go on that skydive, or I'm not going to do that thing, as it is to say, you know what, I am going to persist through this fear because I recognize it as something that's trying to hold me back, not the kind of fear that actually is really speaking to something else to slow me down. So I love that. All right. So what's in the middle? That's the big question, right? What's in the middle? It could be, this big goals thing, right? We got the highlight team, all that. It could be the bigger purpose. We're connecting it to things that we care about on a deeper level. It could be the love that we feel in our relationships, right? Now, for me, that's what it is. For me, it's all the things we've been talking about, right? This is a presentation that I'm giving today, that I'm uniquely putting together for you. So the middle of the Venn diagram is an invitation into this question: is what is alive for you? Like, what is alive for you? And I mean that very intentionally. And this language is selected very intentionally. So it's like, what I mean by alive is that knowing, that life force that's in us, that when we're most honest with ourselves, we know, like, that we feel that energy. So whether it's our callings, what we're called toward in terms of goals and purpose, whether it's our connections, people we're drawn toward for whatever reason, or it could be the things that we know that we're avoiding, right? In terms of that pain or that avoidance, that thorn, that thing that always bothers us when we feel really heavy. Those things are equally as important to look at and go, yeah, there's energy there. There's life force there, whether it's positive or negative. And so that's why I say, what is alive for you? And that's what I want to leave you guys with today, is this contemplation. Right? So consider my storytelling and how it resonates for you, and what I think is important relative to impact and influence, what it is for you. And then really lean into this question for yourself. The reason that I have had like any quote unquote power to impact and influence others is because I have relentlessly leaned into this question, right? Whether it's in the things that I do, whether it's in the people that I love, or the healing that I know that I need. And so I would say that if you really want access to this unique power, that to lean into this question and to lean into your own knowing. And of course, if you want help, let me know, hit me up anytime. And thank you all so much. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Melanie. Your first question from the audience.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of the biggest barriers you've faced in your journey?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there could be a multitude of things. On the social side of the house, as a young, here, I can stop my share. I just want to make sure people got this if they wanted to get these links. On the social side of the house, at the early part of my career, I was very, very enthusiastic, very, very positive person. And that was something that people made fun of. Like, I was not necessarily immediately welcomed, but what was important is that it was true and real for me. I actually am positive. I actually care and love people. Like, it's real. And so people, if they know me long enough, realize that this truth. And that's why my skydiving career is entirely built on this stuff. Right. So I'm not a world champion. Okay. Yes, I've done records and stuff like that, but I'm not competing at the highest levels in the sport. I competed at high levels. I coached at high levels. So I'm not trying to diminish my skills and how good I am at skydiving, but that's not why I'm a leader. That's not why I'm invited to this space. You know what I mean? I'm invited to this space because of that positivity and that honest energy and that willingness to be seen and known for my stories and hope that I'm making an impact. So that's something I would say is real, is that some people really tried to hold me down, really tried to energetically deflate me. And also, I would say one thing that I think is very important to think about is your financial status. It's a very black and white thing, but we have to really care about how much skydiving costs and how it impacts our life. And so what are we going to make? How are we going to make those choices to be able to engage in skydiving in such a way that it works with our life without destroying it? Because I've seen that happen as well. And if you do go in the professional skydiving route, make sure you're also contemplating not a plan B, but another way to support yourself, because you might start to feel burned out. You need to really think about those other ways to support yourself so that you can be involved in skydiving for a very long time.
All right. And the second question that I have from the audience is, if you could pick the most rewarding aspect of your job, what would it be?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. It honestly, it goes back to people. Like if I say my purpose is people, the most rewarding aspect of my job is the life coaching work that I do. The one-on-one connection work that I get to do is bar none the most fulfilling. What I love about skydiving being attached to my work is that for me, it was absolutely a stepping stone to all the things that I talked about today. I would never have gotten, I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe I would have. I have no idea. But I see how skydiving helped me along my own road to spiritual healing, to spiritual seeking, and to that deeper healing. Is that I thought skydiving was the be all end all answer to my life's happiness for a long time. Only until I was like, oh, I'm getting really burned out, I'm really tired, did I start to realize, oh, there's more to me as a person that I need to and want to look at, even though it's scary. And so I love helping people with that part of their growth, with that part of their healing. And so that life coaching work one-on-one, and certainly the work that Jay and I are doing with the podcast, and absolutely the bigger work when you feel like you can make an even bigger difference when you're doing something big, like with Highlight and getting on it's so much less about, I could care less about getting on a big interview, but I'm the reason it excites me is because I know so many people are going to see that and maybe be inspired. Like the humanity for me is absolutely the biggest part of my fulfillment.
Melanie, this is Allison. So I just was hoping that you'd be able to explain a little bit more about Highlight and the purpose and kind of that drive behind the team.
Yes, absolutely. And Allison, you mentioned earlier about the WSN, the Women's Skydiving Network, and I want to briefly talk about the WSN because everyone, we have a private Facebook group for women who are looking for support, and the foundation is so generous and like in contemplation around how can it amplify mentorship in our sport? How can we make skydiving a safer place for women? And I mean that in all the different ways that skydiving culture can be elevated and healed itself. Like I didn't understand that misogyny was even a thing because I grew up at a drop zone. I grew up in a very misogynistic place. It's like when you're a fish, you don't, someone's like, oh, the water's really nice, but you don't know you're even in the water because you're a fish. So like that was me for a long, long time. And so the WSN is funding efforts like Highlight, Highlight is the demonstration jump team meant to be all women going out into non-skydiving spaces to both share our sport with the world, but also to share women doing really big things as a source, hopefully, of inspiration for so many more in and out of our sport.
Excellent. And then the other question that I had come up on my side is how do you balance your passion for skydiving, your work, and all of that outside of everything?
That is a great question. I will quickly make sure I like to keep it #reels peeps. So yeah, follow me on Instagram. You'll get a lot of comedy. But how do I balance? Back in the day, I did not balance. I did not balance at all. And so what happened is I went all into skydiving. And that's a big reason why I've been successful as a professional. I'm very lucky I found the sport when I was 18 years old. I'm very lucky that I decided to continue and finish college and get a job at an investment bank that allowed me to spend a ton of money on competition and get really good at a young age. So it depends on the path that you take. But I now, having had the experience of major life breakdown, of major burnout, major personal life mushroom cloud, major fear phases, which really, I had this painful period of stepping back from skydiving in sort of the middle part of my career. And that forced me to learn what it was like to have a life where skydiving wasn't in my life. because I had started skydiving since I was 18 years old. I didn't even know who I was without it. So I took this really big break because I was forced to, essentially. I needed to, healing wise. It's another whole story. I'm happy to tell it, but it's not for now because it's too long. But now I realize, oh, I need to protect the love that I feel for skydiving. I really need to protect it because this is special. And I now don't F around, pardon my potential French there. And I make sure to sleep. I make sure to say no to things that I don't want to do. I bravely step forward in my skydiving career. Like, I don't load organize anymore because I don't want to. It's something I did. I did it for many years and I loved it, but I don't do that anymore. Now I lead an online skydiving coaching group so that people who want to work with me can work with me. And I do highlight because that's very purpose driven. But without those things, I wouldn't be still organizing because it's not where I'm called anymore. And so I think you have to be really honest with yourself about those things too. And I think it just takes experience and breakdown and burnout to realize you have to choose into balance. Otherwise, you'll burn out and break down again, which is fine, but just know that that's likely to happen.
I definitely can relate to that. I don't see any more questions from the floor. Do you, Melanie, on your chat? I don't know if you see any questions there. We have about 3 minutes. If no, all right. Well, yeah. Thank you, Melanie, for leading off our conference. It is just like we said, we connected more during the PIA, and I knew this was just the presentation to have. I encourage everyone to check out the Women's Skydiving Network website and their social media platforms, as well as Melanie's podcast, Trust the Journey, in partnership with the wonderful Canadian Jay Maletsky. Yeah. So many of us, of course, know Jay over here. Other than that, thank you again so much, Melanie. Really appreciate your time. Yeah. We are going to take a 10-minute break to allow each of you to grab another coffee, especially those of you on the West Coast, but also to complete the presentation survey. You're going to see a QR code on your screen, and also I'll be posting a direct link in the chat group. So your feedback is super important to us. After every presentation, we're going to have these surveys, and I'll repeat myself. Don't take very long to do that. So it's quick and easy, but it gives us good feedback. And we will be resuming for our next presentation, which will be at 8:50 Pacific time. So Melanie, again, thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. I so appreciate you. And thank you for doing things like this. I couldn't be behind it more. Thank you guys so much.
Love it. Well, guys, we will see everybody here again in, I think, about 11 minutes or so. So we'll see you soon. Enjoy the little break.